Welcome to your custom deep dive. I'm your host, and I'm really excited about today's mission because we're looking at a pretty unique piece of source material.
Yeah, we really are. Thanks for having me. I mean, usually we have these massive reports or books to go through, right?
Right, exactly. But today, you've handed us something that is remarkably brief. It's just highly, highly concentrated.
It's basically a title and two sentences.
Yeah. We are unpacking a text titled The Architecture of Personal Mastery. And the two sentences are, and I'm quoting here, your only competition is you, and be better than yesterday.
It's a completely distilled philosophy. Just no fluff at all.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because while it is literally just a handful of words, they provide this massive shortcut to a really profound shift in perspective.
Absolutely. And I think to really set the stage for you here to make this useful, we have to acknowledge the context of the environment we're all operating in right now.
You mean like the constant comparisons?
Yeah, exactly. We live in an era of infinite external benchmarking.
Oh, infinite benchmarking.
Yeah.
That is a really good way to put it.
Right, because you can open your phone at any moment and instantly see thousands of people who are seemingly moving faster than you.
Or achieving more, or making more money.
Yeah, building taller skyscrapers, so to speak.
Right. So whether you are prepping for a high-stakes meeting at work today, or maybe training for a marathon, or honestly, just trying to navigate the daily chaos of your life without burning out.
Which is hard enough on its own.
Totally. Well, this deep dive is designed to fundamentally restructure how you view success. It's meant to cut through the static of all that infinite benchmarking.
Because the default way the human brain views progress right now is, well, it's actually working against us. It's structurally unsound.
Structurally unsound. That ties perfectly into the title of the source. Before we even get to those two sentences, we have to look at the framing, right? The architecture of personal mastery.
Yeah, the choice of the word architecture is doing a lot of heavy lifting here.
It really is. Yeah. Because architecture implies deliberate, intentional design. It's not a natural landscape that just happens by chance.
Or like erosion or something.
Right.
It requires a blueprint. It requires actual labor.
Exactly. I always think about when you watch a massive construction project right in the middle of a city, there's this incredibly long period where absolutely nothing seems to be happening above ground.
Oh, yeah, it's just months of invisible labor. To the outside observer, it just looks like a giant hole in the ground with some dirt moving around.
Right. For months, they're pouring concrete deep into the bedrock. They're laying a foundation that no one walking by will ever even see.
But if the developers rush that invisible part,
Yes. If they get impatient because they want to, start throwing up glass and steel to look impressive to the neighbors.
then the entire structure is compromised.
Yeah.
The foundation dictates the absolute limit of the height.
You simply cannot build a 100-story tower on a 2-story foundation. And by calling it the architecture of mastery, the text is saying you have to build your own foundation.
It shifts the entire burden of responsibility, doesn't it?
Oh, completely.
Because if mastery were simply a matter of innate talent, you could easily excuse yourself. You could just say, well, I just wasn't born with the gift for public speaking.
Or I'm naturally terrible at managing my time.
Right. But by defining it as architecture, the text asserts that mastery is a construction project. Anyone can learn to lay a brick. Anyone can learn to read a blueprint.
But it also means you have to actually do the labor. You can't just wait around for inspiration to strike you. You have to haul the materials and physically build the thing.
And notice the second half of that title, too. It isn't the architecture of industry dominance.
Right. Or the architecture of defeating your opponent.
Exactly. It is personal mastery. It is framed entirely inward.
Which is such a weird concept in our culture.
It is. Mastery is not positioned as dominance over a particular subject or, dominance over other people in your field. It's mastery over the self.
So the materials you are working with are your own habits,
Yeah.
your own emotional regulation, your own focus. You're both the architect and the raw material.
That's a great way to put it. And if the architecture of your personal mastery is solid and well-designed, you essentially have a safe, quiet place to operate from.
Regardless of what is happening in the external market.
Yeah.
Or just the broader world in general.
Right. It provides an internal locus of control. But that internal focus naturally forces a really uncomfortable question.
Which is?
If we accept that mastery is an internal, deliberate structure we're building, who are we actually trying to outbuild?
Which brings us right to the first core rule from the excerpts. Your only competition is you.
Yes.
Now, I have to pause here and push back on this concept a little bit on behalf of you, the listener. because this is the natural friction point.
Let's hear it.
Is the word only actually realistic? Like, let's just be practical for a second. If you are going for a job promotion and there are 3 other highly qualified candidates at your company, those other people are literally your competition.
They are.
Or if you're bidding for a contract, rival companies are your competition. Does this philosophy just, fall apart in the real world?
I'm so glad you brought that up because that is the exact friction everyone feels when they first encounter this idea.
It sounds a bit naive, right?
It does. It sounds like a participation trophy mindset. Like, oh, we're all winners here. But if we dig into the psychology of it, it is actually intensely strategic.
Okay, how so?
Let's look at the mechanics of external competition. When you compete against that coworker for the promotion, what are you actually focusing your cognitive energy on?
Well, you're tracking their moves. You're looking at who they're networking with, how fast they complete their projects.
Right. What their metrics look like compared to yours.
Exactly.
And how much control do you actually have over their networking skills, their speed, or their metrics?
Absolutely zero.
Zero. When your metric for success is tied to external competition, you are allocating massive amounts of brain power to tracking variables you cannot control.
Wow. That's true. You don't control the market. You don't control the hiring manager's mood that day.
And you certainly don't control your opponent's genetic advantages or their background. And from a purely neurological standpoint, focusing on uncontrollable variables spikes your cortisol.
Which causes stress.
Extreme stress. It creates anxiety, which actually impairs your executive function.
And that's the exact part of your brain you need to perform well at your job.
Exactly. So the text isn't denying that those other job candidates exist. It's saying that focusing on them is a massive misallocation of your own architectural resources.
Oh, I love that. So staring at someone else's construction site doesn't add a single brick to your own building.
Precisely. By defining the competition strictly and only as you withdraw all that wasted cognitive energy from the external world.
And you reinvest it into the variables you actually control. Your effort, your preparation, your emotional response.
It acts as a psychological armor against the anxiety of the zero-sum game.
That makes a lot of sense mechanically. It's like, if I'm running a race, right?
Yeah.
Turning my head to look at the runner in the next lane physically slows me down. It ruins my form.
Yes, perfect analogy. And let me ask you this. What happens if you run the absolute best race you have ever run? Your personal best by a wide margin. But the person in the next lane happens to be a genetic anomaly who breaks the world record. Did you fail?
I mean, under the standard definition of competition, yes, you lost. You're a failure. You get silver or no medal at all.
But under the architecture of personal mastery, you succeeded wildly.
Right, because you beat yourself.
Exactly. If you allow their genetic anomaly to invalidate your personal progress, you have allowed a totally random external factor to demolish your internal architecture.
Wow. The text is demanding that you sever that link completely.
It is.
But, there is a terrifying flip side to that.
Oh, absolutely.
By severing that link, by stripping away everyone else and saying your only competition is you, the text has effectively cleared the entire arena. The stadium is empty. It's just you standing on the field alone.
Yeah, the crowd is gone.
And while that sounds peaceful at first, it removes every single hiding place you have.
You lose all your scapegoat.
Exactly. You can't say, well, I lost because the referee made a bad call, or I didn't get the contract because of office politics.
Whoop.
If your only competition is you, then sure, every victory is yours, but so is every single failure. It is a demand for absolute uncompromising accountability.
Which is why truly inhabiting this philosophy is so difficult. We are evolutionarily wired to compare ourselves to the tribe.
Yeah, see where we fit in the hierarchy.
Exactly. Overriding that instinct takes immense cognitive effort. When you are your only competition, you know all of your own weaknesses. You know when you are cutting corners.
Because you can bluff a client and you can bluff a rival, but you cannot bluff yourself.
You know exactly what you did or didn't do.
Okay, so we have successfully cleared the arena, we've eliminated the external competitors, and we are alone on the playing field. The immediate problem becomes, how do we keep score without an opponent? If we are playing against ourselves, what is the metric?
Right. How do you know if you're winning?
Exactly. And the source answers this with the final excerpt. Be better than yesterday.
4 words that solve a surprisingly complex measurement problem.
They really do. And I want to look at this through the lens of compounding interest, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, let's do that.
In finance, if an asset gains just a tiny fraction of a % in interest, It looks like a rounding error. It seems completely insignificant on day one.
You barely even notice it on the balance sheet.
Right. But the next time it compounds, it's gaining interest on the original amount plus that new interest. Over a long enough timeline, that tiny, incremental, almost invisible daily growth explodes into an astronomical return.
The invisible foundation becomes the skyscraper?
Yes. And notice what the text does not demand here. It doesn't say, be perfect today. It doesn't say, achieve total mastery immediately.
It just says, be better.
Exactly. It advocates for incrementalism applied to human behavior. Maybe you just listen for 3 minutes longer in a meeting today before interrupting your coworker.
Or maybe you reacted to a really stressful email with like 10% less defensiveness.
Right. That's a win.
What's fascinating here is the specific temporal anchor it uses. It forces the comparison to yesterday. And this is neurologically brilliant.
How so? Why is yesterday better than, say, comparing yourself to where you want to be in 5 years? Like setting a big 5-year goal.
Because of how the brain processes time and identity. When people set goals, they typically compare their current flawed self to a completely fabricated, flawless future self.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean.
Right. They hallucinate this mastered version of themselves who wakes up at 4 a.m., meditates for an hour, never procrastinates on social media, and executes perfectly every single day.
Oh, man, we all have that imaginary super version of ourselves in our heads. I know mine well.
We do. And the brain actually processes that future self almost like a stranger. There's an empathy gap there. Furthermore, when you wake up today and inevitably fall short of that hallucinated perfection because you are human, the gap between reality and the fantasy is so massive that it triggers an anxiety response.
Because you're failing right out of the gate.
Exactly. The brain perceives it as a massive failure, which just kills your motivation.
It's like staring at a map, seeing the destination is 1,000 miles away, and deciding there's just no point in even taking the first step.
Exactly. But be better than yesterday acts more like a compass than a map.
Oh, that's a cool way to look at it.
A compass doesn't show you the whole journey, right? It just tells you if your very next step is pointed in the right direction.
Right.
By anchoring the metric to yesterday, the text completely bypasses that anxiety response. Yesterday is not a hallucination. It is a known, fixed, high-resolution data point.
Wow, yeah. You can't lie to yourself about yesterday because you were literally there. You remember exactly how much effort you put in, you know where you got distracted, and you know where you succeeded.
It is a deeply intimate, highly localized baseline. It strips the emotion out of the measurement.
You don't have to judge your entire life's trajectory. You just have to ask a simple binary question. Was today's output marginally better than yesterday's? Yes or no?
Exactly. Yes or no?
You know, when you put it like that, it is simultaneously the most forgiving and the most fiercely demanding rule imaginable.
I like that distinction. Let's push on that a bit. Why forgiving?
Well, it's forgiving because the bar is entirely relative to your immediate reality. The bar is literally just whatever you managed to do 24 hours ago.
Right.
Let's say yesterday was a complete disaster. You were exhausted, you ate terribly, you snapped at a colleague, and you got absolutely nothing done.
We've all had those days.
We have. Well, from an architectural standpoint, that is great news for today because today's bar is incredibly low.
That's true.
You just have to be slightly better than a disaster. You don't have to suddenly be perfect. You just have to step over a very, very low tripwire. It accommodates the natural fluctuations in human energy.
And that's a vital mechanism because it prevents that downward spiral where one bad day ruins the whole week. You know, like when people feel like they've ruined their streak, so they just give up.
Exactly. The baseline simply resets every morning.
But you mentioned it's also fiercely demanding.
Yeah, it is demanding because the mechanism never, ever stops. If you had an absolute peak performance day yesterday, like you crushed every meeting, you hit a personal record at the gym, and you were incredibly patient with your family.
The perfect day.
The perfect day. The rule does not change. You still have to be better than that today.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You don't get to rest on your laurels. The architecture of mastery is built entirely out of these yesterdays, stacked one on top of the other forever.
There is no finish line. The moment you believe the architecture is finished, you have ceased to master anything. You are just essentially maintaining a museum of past achievements.
A museum of past achievements.
Wow! Be better than yesterday forces you into a state of continuous active adaptation because the environment changes, your age changes, your responsibilities change. The self is always a moving target.
So bringing this all together into something you can take with you today. You brought us a highly concentrated dose of wisdom today. A tiny packet of text that holds a massive paradigm shift once you unpack the mechanics behind it.
Yeah, we've deconstructed how the architecture of personal mastery is not a guide for external dominance. It is a blueprint for internalizing your locus of control.
It teaches us that the cognitive energy we spend tracking and worrying about our competition is energy stolen directly from our own construction site.
Right. It demands that we eliminate the distraction of external rivals entirely, knowing that we cannot control their variables anyway.
And it solves the paralyzing anxiety of perfectionism by giving us a deeply pragmatic, neurological hack for measuring progress.
It bypasses the overwhelming hallucination of the flawless future self. And instead, it uses the only objective, high-resolution baseline we actually have, who we were 24 hours ago.
So as you go about your day today, whether you are heading into that high-stakes meeting we talked about, working on a personal projects, or just trying to navigate your relationships, keep this framework active in your mind.
It really cuts right through the noise and the infinite benchmarking of the modern world.
It violently simplifies your daily mission. You don't have to beat the market. You don't have to beat your coworkers. Just find the compass heading that makes you marginally better than the you from yesterday.
It's a philosophy that gives you complete agency. Your progress is entirely in your own hands.
But before we let you go, there is one lingering friction point that this blueprint leaves us with. A question I want you to mull over on your own today. The text commands us to be better than yesterday,
Yeah.
which implies a clean, linear progression. But human beings are inherently nonlinear. Biology is messy.
Very messy.
So what happens on the days you inevitably fail? What happens on the day you look at your actions and realize you were actually worse than yesterday? You lost your temper, you dropped the ball, your skills regressed. Does your entire architecture crumble under the weight of that regression?
That's the real test, isn't it?
It is. Or does a failure simply provide you with a much easier yesterday to beat tomorrow? Think about how self-forgiveness fits into this highly rigid, demanding blueprint. Because if your only competition is you, you are also the only one who can grant yourself a rematch.